lady that in her case, she never went to the doctor. So she died at home. She was, I believe, in her 40s. She had other children. She had had complications in her other pregnancies. So she was afraid, according to her family members in this article, that the law in Georgia would prevent her from having an abortion, and that would cost her life. So her doctor never, she never went to go see her doctor. So she got online and ordered abortion pills online.
Welcome to the Janelle King Show. I'm Janelle King, Extra 106.3, and this is where we discuss kitchen table topics that are typically banned from family gatherings, but are absolutely necessary in order to have a strong republic. And today, our kitchen table topic is, oh my God, the Georgia heartbeat bill. Like, why are we talking about this again? But either way, we're going to get into it. The Georgia heartbeat bill is formerly known as HB 481. As it's also called the Living Infants Fairness and Equality, or the LIFE Act. That's the official name, but the heartbeat bill is the name that everyone typically knows. It was passed in 2019. And recently, it looks like this bill was overturned, which is wild to me. But we're going to get into details of that, as well as there has been some deaths that has been linked to this particular bill that, anyway, we'll get into that too. And then we have all the narratives. So we're going to dive into this deep. We recently saw a press conference with Representative Lauren Daniel, who is a friend of the show. She's been here before when she was running for office. But here we're talking about a specific issue. She has supported life issues, maternal health, for God knows how long, and she's not stopping. And thank God we have her. So my fellow young sister in the game, Representative Lauren Daniel, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's an important issue. I think the last time I was on your show, I was talking about maternal health. It's an issue I think crosses political bounds, and then you see it get wrapped in the political narrative. And so I'm excited to be here and talk to you about it today.
Perfect. Well, let's just update the public, right? Because if you've been living under your proverbial rock, which I have definitely been living under the rock of elections, Lord have mercy. But I couldn't believe this happened. I hadn't been following it enough. And so when I saw what happened in the court, it really blew me. So can you update us on where we are and how we get here?
Yes. So Sister Song is an organization that filed a lawsuit several years ago in our court system trying to overturn our heartbeat legislation. And it has sat in the court system. Judge McBurney, I think is how you pronounce his name, ruled that it was unconstitutional. He gave a few reasons, basically made the argument that women are, I guess, property of the state. That's kind of how he phrased it. It was really weird. A dangerous application, I think, but nonetheless. And in that, he ruled on some things, but one of the things I found was most interesting about his ruling, if you go through it, and it's 22 pages, I won't get into all that, but he did not strike out the sections of a baby being in the womb being defined as a human being. And so that's a win, that's to us, that's okay. You're recognizing that it is life. And you're making a different argument, which is, I guess it's interesting to see. I don't want to say it's a positive because obviously it's not a positive, but it is something that we have to keep fighting. It's something that this is the second time he has ruled on it. The last time it was overturned on our end, I guess is how you would phrase it. And today, Attorney General Chris Carr actually was granted the stay on it that was asked for, which means that his ruling is not in effect while it works through the court system. Okay. So it is super duper confusing. I think it's really disheartening because providers don't know what's going on. Women don't know what's going on. And so in doing that, you are introducing a new level of confusion by filing all these lawsuits.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, it's not lost on me that it gets brought up during election season. I think that's worth mentioning because it's very coordinated. But all of that to say, we did get notes today that stay was granted. And so everything we talk about today in regards to this is kind of going to be going back and forth between what the heartbeat legislation says, what has been in effect, what would happen if it's overturned, and where we go in the future. So just trying to clarify.
Thank you for bringing us up to speed. You know, a lot of times we hear about people, you know, filing lawsuits against, you know, the state and against our bills and our decisions, and then we don't know where they go or what happens. And unfortunately, in this case, McBurney, who seems to be involved in a lot of our stuff, but anyway, that's okay, Judge McBurney. It's all right. No shade to you, but oh my God, it just feels like you're always around. But no. So what we're hearing is that he decided that the bill was unconstitutional, which is so bizarre to me. So when you say women, did he state that the bill would make women a warden of the state? What was he saying?
Sort of. So he made the argument essentially that because women are not state property and they are carrying a baby within utero, that she is the only one, a carrying mother is the only one that can possibly be responsible for this child. And basically said that the society has no say because she is the one, so the state doesn't have a say. I should also clarify the unconstitutionality was argued under the state constitution, not the actual constitution. So the argument here is on the word of liberty, actually, which is interesting. But basically, that is the concept, is that, you know, it infringes on a woman's liberty. And
to kill her baby.
Yes. But it would revert back to when Georgia's abortion law would be set at 22 weeks. So it's a weird argument. It kind of just feels like he was just kind of throwing stuff everywhere. No disrespect to a judge, but that's what it feels like. Trying to see what would stick. And so in that, it's, I don't know how you, he struck out some, without going through it line by line, I don't want to do that. But he struck out some interesting things. And one of them's the reporting requirements. You know, that's there so that these doctors that provide abortions, if a woman is harmed in some way, can be protected, you know, from medical negligence. And so to strike that out's odd. It just several things. But then to make the argument that, you know, the society is not responsible for that baby in any way. I want you to think about other things that we have in our code and how that could play a role, because that's a big concern when it comes to something like pregnancy Medicaid. The society is paying for that baby from the time it's conceived until a year after it's born. And so, you know, to make the argument that the society doesn't care for these, that's not wholly true. And then you can obviously.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion.
Extrapolate or expand that out to other things like Medicaid, Medicare, those people that are, you know, have other issues, which I think it's just a dangerous argument to make. Yeah, no, it really is. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper. But because what I've seen, particularly in the situation I'm in on my side of the argument when it comes to the election stuff, is that the media is they are a thorn in your flesh, because particularly when you have 6 or 7 outlets all saying the same thing and it's all wrong, and then you're trying to tell the public
please don't believe that. Please don't believe that. Just go read the bill. Go read the bill. They don't read the bill. So what are some misconceptions that you're hearing in the media? Not necessarily specific to the deaths, because we're going to talk about the young women that have unfortunately passed away, but just as it relates to this bill as a whole.
Yes. So when you hear the media, the left, they talk about the exceptions, like exceptions don't exist almost is kind of what they say. You know, oh, if the life of the mother's at risk, we have an exception for that in our law. And no, you know, Kamala Harris likes to say, oh, well, she has to be on death's doorstep. That's not true. Literally in the law, it says under, I want to say, it says something along the lines of any reasonable medical. So a doctor, basically, they have to reasonably be able to say this could harm her irreparably. You know, she doesn't even have to lose her life. If that means that she loses fertility long term, that is covered in our state law.
So basically, if the doctor says it, then it can be considered a excuse.
Yes, correct. So and that goes for any abortion. So at any point of a pregnancy, even if it has a heartbeat, if a doctor deems that there is a medical reason outside of something like, oh, I'm going to commit suicide, because that in other countries, that has been what they have taught women to say. And we can talk about EMTALA and the difference in federal versus state law and that. But many abortions in other parts of the world are provided because they go in and they say, you know, I'm suicidal. And that's used as a medical reason. So our law does not cover that. That was made, that's explicit in that. But anything a doctor believes that could cost her life is covered. There is an exception for rape and incest. You hear that a lot, that there's, you know, if a young girl was raped, I mean, I believe that there's a political commercial going on about a 12-year-old. Those cases are absolutely tragic. It's a very small percentage of, you know, girls that happens to. It does exist, and there are exceptions in our law for it. And then the other one is what we consider a medically futile pregnancy. So those are babies that are not compatible with life under a scientific reason. And so a doctor could also, you say, hey, your baby's not going to make it, if that's something chromosomal, if that's, you know, any condition that would cause that. So that exception's there. So those are what we like to call the 3 exceptions. Another thing that a lot of media coverage will say is that miscarriage treatment is not available under these heartbeat laws. And there is not a law in the country that prevents a doctor from treating a woman with a miscarriage. And I actually talked about this in my press conference, and, you know, I have experienced a miscarriage, unfortunately, recently, you know, and under the heartbeat law, and literally was immediately offered, listen, you can have a DNC if that's what you choose. And so I talked about that. This is a perfect example of what the media does. I talked about that in the press conference, and one of the local news stations literally mentioned one of my comments, not that comment, but one of the other comments about the exceptions, and then turned around and gave his commentary that, you know, a DNC procedure was a felony in Georgia. I had literally stood up that day and said that's not true. So to see that it's very dangerous. It's disingenuous. It's political in nature. It's got to stop.
Yeah, no, it really does. I feel like what we're teetering now into just being propagandists, right? As if we haven't already seen a propaganda style type of media. But I'm very concerned because I understand you can give speeches, you can talk for 45 minutes, you can give interviews for 20 minutes, and then they'll take a 3-second clip and then tell you everything you just said was wrong, right? And you just told them everything, and it's not right and it's not fair. That leads into, let's talk about this abortion pill, because where we are right now, I have stood on the pro-life side for a very long time. I understand there's a lot of pro-life activists and people in the community. And at one point we felt like we were just fighting for the life of the child while also supporting the mom But now I feel like the pro-life movement, now we got to fight for the life of the mother, because the stuff that they're putting out there is so dangerous. So can you talk about what happened to the two young ladies that the media is trying to connect to this heartbeat bill, and then the correlation with the abortion pill?
Yes. So first of all, let's talk about the abortion pill. So when it was originally approved by the FDA to be released, I believe it was set at 7 weeks. It could have been earlier, but I believe it was set at 7 weeks. And there were parameters put around it. You had to have an ultrasound, you had to have a follow-up, really to protect the life of the mom. If she developed an infection or something like that, that needed to be caught quickly. However, in the COVID era, if you will, these pills were allowed by the FDA and the federal government to be mailed to people's houses, regardless of state law. So there is no mail abortion pill law in Georgia. These women can get abortion pills mailed to them in the mail. Essentially, what that leads to is a DIY abortion at home. And what that looks like, they will tell you is, it's a heavy period. You might have some cramping, take Tylenol, you'll be fine. However, it is dangerous. A lot of women end up going to the hospital, a majority of women. So it's over 50% of women that take these pills have to go to the hospital for heavy bleeding, hemorrhaging, that kind of thing. And that is on the black box warning label for these drugs.
Wow.
However, there is an issue around informed consent oftentimes in terms of, what women are told, how it will affect them. And when I told you it was originally set at 7 weeks, they have now pushed it up to 10 weeks. And all of the regulations around it have been removed. So under a guise of we're expanding access to care, is what you often hear. We're expanding access to abortion care. They have removed the parameters for women to make sure that they're getting safe abortions. You hear that. Obviously,
Right.
we're pro-life or against abortion, but the argument on the left used to be that it was safe and rare. And it's no longer rare and it's not safe. And they're not being honest about either of those things. So, how that played out with Amber Thurman and Candi Miller, I am so sad, just genuinely. And if either one of their families ever reached out to me, I would do everything I could to help them.
Yeah.
Because I see this industry as very predatory. And, I was a teen mom. Like, I have told my story. I know, I know what it feels like to be afraid and feel like you can't have a baby. Like you're not ready. You're not prepared. You don't have the capacity. I know that feeling. And I know when you're afraid. And so I see that industry as an industry that capitalizes on that and kind of pits women against themselves and what they were created to do. And inherently teaches women that they're not strong. They're not capable. It's the exact opposite of liberation. And so when it comes to the death of these two women, obviously it's become national. You've seen it in both presidential debates, the vice president and the president. And it's just very sad because it absolutely was preventable. And I think the media is part to blame, when you're spreading misinformation. So I'll handle both of them separately. So with Amber Nicole Thurman, she was actually in Henry County, where I represent. So she was a year older than me. This is something that hits very close to home. She, from the original news sources, so this is all what was put out by ProPublica. was that she got very sick. So her and her friend went to North Carolina to get a surgical abortion because she was carrying twins.
Okay.
And she was 9 weeks along, reportedly. And so she wanted a surgical abortion. She got there late due to traffic. And someone at the clinic, it doesn't say whether it was a doctor or nurse or whatever, it just says somebody at the clinic gave her abortion pills and sent her on her way because she was late for her appointment. I just that is so dangerous, but there are no ramifications for that doctor. There are no ramifications. And so, when we talk about the things that could have been prevented, that doctor, number one, should absolutely be held liable. Because the treatment for a medical abortion, number one, they were originally set at 7 weeks. They're now being pushed up to 10 weeks. They don't always expel all the baby. I mean, I'll just call it what it is. It doesn't always expel all the tissue remnants left over. And so that creates an infection. So you have somebody that's probably 9-10 weeks along at this point, and she's carrying 2. So the dosage would have been different. So if I asked this question in the press conference, was an ultrasound ever done? Because if she was late and she didn't have time for an appointment, my guess is it probably wasn't. And so she was given something that wasn't standard of care for what she was dealing with. And so she comes home, and it makes her very sick. I believe I read in one of the articles that she was throwing up blood, passed out, and her boyfriend called 911 and an ambulance came to get her. Now, I think that's what I read somewhere. I don't know which one it was. So, when you have a bunch of news sources coming out with different stuff, nonetheless, that is a symptom of being septic. That's your organs are now shutting down, which is a danger. It's a danger of these abortion pills. And so she's in the hospital. Reportedly, it takes them 20 hours to operate on her. In the ProPublica article, the journalist takes the liberty to say that they waited that long because of our heartbeat legislation. Now, the issue with that is, number one, her providers never said that. No one who took care of Amber Nicole Thurman ever said that they waited because of the heartbeat legislation. Number two, even if somebody did say that, she had already had an abortion. Those babies did not have a heartbeat. The heartbeat law does not apply to a fetus without a heartbeat. So it's literally not possible that law in particular applied in this case. And so it's a very serious topic. It's a very serious conversation. Why they waited, I don't know. I'm not an emergency doctor. There's a lot of reasons that she probably wasn't stable. And they didn't want to operate on somebody that wasn't stable. But nonetheless,
the waiting is not the problem. The waiting was the pill, right? She was throwing up blood at home. Like, this is
right. She was already very, very sick. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that is her case. And so she had a 6-year-old little boy at home, and it's devastating. It's there aren't words to put in. Like, there's no way to make this better, which I think is why it's so upsetting to me to see that family be used for political purposes, because they're filled with grief, and I can't imagine. And then Candi Miller, she's another lady that in her case, she never went to the doctor. So she died at home. She was, I believe, in her 40s. She had other children. She had complications in her other pregnancies. So she was afraid, according to her family members in this article, that the law in Georgia would prevent her from having an abortion, and that would cost her life. So her doctor never, she never went to go see her doctor. So she got online and ordered abortion pills online.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload new content. Now back to the discussion.
Now, when you do that, she used a doctor out of the Netherlands. So this is not a US doctor. She's a doctor out of the Netherlands. Those pills were then funneled through India into the US. In Candi Miller's autopsy, they found a lethal dose of fentanyl. So when we're talking about what killed her,
abortion pills,
I don't know. I don't know. There's no way for us to know because there are no regulations around it. It's absolutely possible. And to me, that is an injustice to her family because there is no ability to look into it because of the federal guidelines being removed by the Democrat Party. Like it just is what it is. That's what they have done. And so when we talk about this issue, I always tell people, if you are pro-abortion, fine. That is your opinion. But we should have a conversation on whether or not when women are seeking that, if they're safe. Because right now they're not. And you should care about that, even if you believe abortion should be legal. And to me, that's not the conversation that's being had. The conversation always turns into, well, they're trying to strip your rights away. And that's just not true. And so, you know, with Candi Miller, she died at home, and she was found by her husband, I believe, with her child next to her. And it was that preventable? Absolutely. So, but those are your two cases. Yeah, those are your two cases. Those are the scenarios around them, and neither one of them were caused by a law that says you can't have an abortion after a heartbeat's found.
Matter of fact, it was caused by people trying to circumvent the law by creating these policies that allows you to mail abortion pills. You know, I saw Julie Emmons standing beside you, and that just made my heart smile. I love her. She was on the show as well. And she gave us an in-depth explanation on the abortion pills. So if you're watching and you want more details on it, I will put her link to her show in the bio or in the description section. But as we continue on, you mentioned the difference between federal and state law. I want to talk about this because, you know, when Roe v. Wade was overturned and sent back to the states, I thought that did away with all federal law.
So there is something called EMTALA, and it has existed for many, many years. And essentially what it does is if you present at a hospital with an emergency, they have to treat you regardless of what may or may not be in your state law. And abortion falls under EMTALA. And so they have ruled that, you know, essentially, even if we had a law in Georgia that said no exceptions whatsoever, EMTALA would supersede that. And so when you hear the narrative that there are, you know, some states are stricter on abortion than other states, at the end of the day, if a woman presents with an emergency, she will be granted whatever it takes to save her life, including an abortion if that scenario arrives. In every single state, there are no exceptions. So that's why that narrative matters, because it doesn't exist. It's a lie.
Right. Well, because they're not trying to push, you know, health safe abortions. They don't care. They just care about pushing a narrative. And I'm so sad to hear these stories, because this is exactly what we thought was going to happen when these pills started being shipped through the mail. My concern was that it was going to happen to young girls, but you have these scenarios. It sounds like Candi, she was fed the misinformation about what's going on in our state as it relates to policy. So she made a bad medical decision for herself. And then you look at the other young woman who had twins. I mean, how would they know what if she had subtuplets, you know? I mean, multiples. I mean, would this pill work for something like that? I mean, passing two babies at home, just toss her some pills and say, hey, take this, without even checking, or possibly allegedly, because we don't know the full story. But either way, all of this sounds like neglect. it sounds like the abortion pill is a problem. It sounds like the pro-life movement was right by saying it was a problem. And in order to get ahead of it, they are pushing this narrative that it's somehow because you can't get abortions that people are dying from abortions. It's the most bizarre thing. So what are your next steps? How can we support? Like what do you need from the public, and what are we doing? Because this is big.
It's a big issue. You know, Janelle, I've talked to you. You're my friend. You know, it's tough to say what the future holds because we are in a state that believes in moderation. It just is what it is. The polling has been done, and so the legislature has followed that, and that is our job. Just quite frankly, it's our job to represent the people we represent. And so, I would like to see some things change. I would like to see some parameters put back in terms of safeguards because one, we're losing babies. Yeah. Two, we're losing women, and it is what it is. Now, something else that you will see, and I always tell people this because the response is, oh, well, the complications to these pills are rare. And they'll send you studies and say that, you know, if there are no regulations and there's no requirement to follow up, there's no requirement to keep track of side effects, yeah, it's going to appear rare because nobody's keeping up with it. Now, one of the things I am excited about because the precedent has been set on this, and I hope that they are held to it. The last time, I believe, when I talked to you about maternal health, I was talking about the Maternal Mortality Review Committee.
Yes.
And that's the committee that ultimately, you know, leaked. Now, that's a whole different thing. You know, it's very sad to see a committee leak that kind of information that's supposed to be anonymous and protected. That's a privacy concern for the women that have died, just quite frankly. But they included these two women, which were abortion side effect deaths. And when I had asked last session, I asked when I was dealing with maternal mortality, do we count the side effects for abortion? And I was told, no, we don't. But for these cases that happened in 2022, so the 2 years ago, they obviously were counted. And so my question and what's next is, you know, how many of them are there? Have more been counted? And are we going to get to see that information in the next review released of the report? Because I think that could be fascinating. I think it is something that we should absolutely care about as people that care about maternal mortality. If you have a miscarriage, if you have an abortion, you are postpartum, and just like you are after you have a baby, like your hormones are still all over the place. Your body takes time to get back into, you know, I guess reproductive state is the way you say it. But
it's optimal level.
there are many things that can affect women in a health care perspective, a genuine healthcare perspective, both before and after childbearing. And so, you know, should we keep track of that? Absolutely. So I would like to see that in the future. Now, as for me personally, you know, I'm not going back, I'm not returning to the legislature this year.
Unfortunately, girl, I'm so annoyed by that.
It's okay. God is good all the time. I believe that all things work.
They're going to be asking for you back, though. They're going to be asking for you back.
I know. It's tough. Like I always tell people, like in primaries, voter apathy is at an all-time high. People just don't vote in primaries. You get low turnout, and that kind of stuff happens. And you know, I can't even be upset. Like, I mean, I got attacked for having a baby. Like, if that's not the most anti-pro-life statement, I don't know. If that's the worst you've got is that I had a baby on my chest, it's all right. I'm
like, and you were able to do all of this. So if anything, that should be encouraging. But anyway, all right.
Yes.
We wonder why women don't run for office.
Yeah. Now it does take a toll on your family. Like I can joke about it all day, but it does take a significant toll. But I do think it's work that's worthwhile, especially when we're talking about the unborn. This is an issue that should transcend, into everyday people. I don't care where you stand politically or where you think you stand politically. And so it's an issue I think is worthwhile. School safety is an issue that's worthwhile.
Right.
So when you talk about what I'm going to do in the future, my goal is to stay in the advocacy sphere. My little slogan, if you will, was, that I was fighting for Georgia's families. And regardless, that's still who I am. That's still what I'm going to do. And it just might be on the other side. I've got plenty of friends up there that, I hope will continue on some of these bills I've worked on and the efforts that are being made. So we'll see.
There's a slogan that I say every time something either doesn't work out or where it should. I always say, man's rejection is God's protection. And you never know why he's allowing that to happen. It could be because he saw this coming in the future and he was like, Lauren, I hate to do this to you, but I got to pull you from there and put you over there. That happens all the time with God. So I'm not even we talk about it. I'm frustrated with it because I feel bad for the people that's going to be lacking your leadership and your representation. But I'm excited for what you're getting ready to do. It's time. It is time now for younger women and to stand up and start taking the reins in this pro-life movement. So I'm excited. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. It feels like a new start. So it's exciting.
Yeah. So can you share some 2 or 3 of your organizations that you love, that you support, or one, or whatever you want, but just an organization that I can drop into the description box that other women can follow that you feel are doing the work?
Yes. So obviously, there are pregnancy resources centers all over the state. I always mention them first because that is your first line of defense in your local community. And the women there are never judgmental, Janelle. Like I love working with pregnancy resource centers because when you walk in the door, they don't care what you've done in the past. They don't care. Like they just want to help you and your baby. And if I could get that message to people, that's what I would tell them. They will help you every step of the way. Like our local pregnancy resource center, literally, if you don't have clothes, they will help you get clothes. If you don't have diapers, they'll help you get diapers, formula, anything you could possibly need, a car seat. Like I've bought several car seats and donated them over the years because women need help sometimes. And we've got to meet them in the middle. And so I always say that first. And then you mentioned Julie, the Human Coalition's doing awesome work. And I like them in particular because they are pro-life, but they're also pro-women in the full sense. So they are working on maternal mental health, which is a big deal. I know some people scoff at the mental health epidemic. But the truth is that's when we look at statistics on maternal deaths, many women are committing suicide or are becoming addicted to drugs after birth, which should be a concern to everyone on why and how we can prevent that. Is that extending parental leave, like allowing women to be with their babies longer than 3 to 6 weeks, because we all know that you should be at home with your baby for an extended period of time if possible. And so I love the Human Coalition because they really dive deeper into the causes for things and kind of work on meeting women where they're at. And I appreciate that a great deal. And they're pro-life through and through. They're trying to prevent as many abortions as possible, but they're also helping women afterwards. And I think that's commendable. We should always elevate that when possible.
I'm excited because I support a PRC center as well, or a PRC, and mine is in Douglasville, and I toured that location, and now so I do send things to them. That's my little PRC. I think everyone should grab a PRC and support it. When everyone's close to you, that's one I happen to be invited to, and I connected with them. But they are all over the state, as you mentioned. So if you are a mom or a previous mom, and so this is twofold. If you are a mom or a previous mom who has a bunch of stuff, a bunch of items that you want to get rid of, consider giving it to a pregnancy resource center. And if you are a new mom who is terrified and have no clue what to do next, and you're just literally standing there like, what am I going to do? Please visit a pregnancy center, resource center near you, because they will help you from a very holistic perspective. And the Human Coalition, yeah, you everything you said, I love it. I'm all on board. Lauren, thank you so much. We could sit here and chit chat as girls and talk about this for hours because it is something that we're passionate about. And most importantly, I think it's important to note that this is a woman issue, not an abortion issue. This is, I kind of hate when they're like, and I've done it myself, where we've been conditioned to call this the abortion topic. No, this is a woman's topic. This is a women's health. This is a maternal health topic. And it's about true reproduction. So I'm thankful. If there's anything else you want to share, this is your chance. If not, we'll wrap it up. And for everyone who's watching, remember to like, share, comment, subscribe. But I'm going to close it out with Lauren and just let her share her heart on this matter.
Thank you, Janelle. I appreciate you having me on today. Obviously, this is something I care a great deal about. And you're right. It's a woman's health issue. And so whether you consider yourself a Republican, a Democrat, a middle person, a libertarian, an independent, whatever, I don't care. I think you have a space at the table, and I think we have to have conversations that are more than just abortion, because there is a lot to work on, and abortion plays a role in it. But if we're not genuinely focused on policy that helps the whole woman and the whole family, we're not doing our job well. And it's just political in nature. And so that's what peeves me. We've got to do better. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Lauren. And thank you all for watching. Please, please, please check out all the links in the description box. And I'm sure we'll have Lauren back on to see what she's doing as she launches into this new world of advocacy. I'm excited to see what comes next. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.